Okay, suppose you're creating an e-commerce website. All your products has a order now button. What happens if a user accidentally clicks the order now many times? As you can see here, you can see the button clicked was called 6 times. So this function was called 6 times. Now what if it was a real life project? In that case, your server would receive a request 6 times in a row. Now your server might have security in place to tackle that, but it would have been much better if you could prevent this in the client side. To do that, we use something called debouncing or throttling in JavaScript. So let's start by looking at debouncing. What debouncing does is, if a function is being called rapidly, only the last function call will be registered. So let's see how we can create our own debounce function. So we can say function, and we're gonna call it debounce, and this will receive two arguments. One will be the function that we want to call, and another one is a delay. And what we're gonna do is return a new function, and we're simply gonna do a set timeout, and we're gonna say function, and after the given delay we're simply going to call that function that was passed. So we can say function. Now what happens if a user calls that function before this timeout was run? We want to click this previous function call and register the latest one. So what we can say is keep track of the set timeout. So we can say let timer, by default it will be null, and when the function is called we'll set the timer to that. So we can say timer and equals to this, and once the function is done executing, we are again gonna set the timer to null. And now if the user calls this function before the timer is cleared or this function is executed, what we are gonna say is if timer, so if the set timeout is already set, we are simply going to clear the timeout. So we are going to say clear timeout our timer. Okay, so this is how the debounce function is created. So let's see how we can do that. So now instead of calling the creating handle click function like this, what we are going to do is say let handle click is going to be debounce, and we know debounce takes two things. One is a function, so this function will be this function. So we can simply say it will simply say the console.log button was clicked, and we want the delay to be, let's say, half a second. So now let's see what happens if I click the buttons many times. As you can see, only the last function call was executed. But if I click it once, wait for some seconds, and then click it again, it was executed successfully. But if I click it rapidly, only the last function call is executed. So that's how we can debounce the function. So let's do that for our mouse move event. Okay, so for now, as you can see, if we move our mouse, the function is being called very rapidly. So here, instead of calling the handle mouse move like this, let's again try to debounce it. So we can say let debounce or let handle mouse move is going to be debounce. Again it takes a function. This function will be just same as this one, so we can just console log it, and this time we can set the delay to be, let's say, 50 milliseconds. And let's see what happens if we move our mouse. As you can see, even if we keep moving our mouse, nothing happens. Once we stop moving, the function is called. But we don't want that for the mouse move event. We want the function to be called, but less rapidly. So for example, we are moving our mouse for 20 milliseconds, right? In case of debounce, after we're done moving, after 20 milliseconds, the function will be called. But what we want is the function to be called after 50 millisecond once, after 100 millisecond once, and 150 millisecond after once, and 200 millisecond after once. So in between. So how can we do that? So in that case, we don't use debouncing. Instead we use what's called throttling, and surprisingly the throttling is very similar to the debouncing. So what we're gonna have to say is function throttle, and here instead of clearing the timeout we're simply gonna say return. So that's it. And now here instead of debounce, let's call throttle, and let's see. So now as you can see the function is being called, but not as rapidly as it was previously. Now one problem we have is, what if we wanted to pass some arguments in our function? Now as we know, the debounce will return a function, so this here is a function. So now instead of calling handle click like this, what we have to say is we're gonna say function, and we can call the debounce function here, debounced handle click function here, but now we can pass something here. So for example we can pass hello, and here the handle click function may take that as, let's say, message, and we're also going to just console log that. So we're going to say message. So now if we click the button, as you can see it says undefined. That is because when you're retaining the function, this function does not take any argument, so we have to tackle that. Now a function can take 1, 2, 3 multiple arguments, we don't know how many, so we're going to use the spread operator. So we're going to say dash 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 arg, so we are capturing all the arguments that might have been passed, and simply when the function is called we have to pass those arguments. And we have to do the same for the debouncing as well. And as you can see it says button clicked hello. So that is how you do debouncing and throttling in JavaScript. Subscribe for more videos just like this.